Hello and good morning, everyone. Only Positivity here. I have my coffee with me, ready to kick off podcast number 17 on this playlist that I'm looking to launch called Elevated Thoughts. So, before diving into the book and everything like that, let's just start with the level set. So, as I endeavor upon pursuing knowledge and life experience in this next phase of life through photography, fitness, traveling, one habit that I've really formed is reading. So this podcast essentially goes through some of the books I've been reading as of late and taking those lessons learned and applying them to experiences in my life. So, before jumping into the book, let's go ahead and start with the story. So, for those of you that are unaware, um, right now, the current period, we're in Ramadan, right, for the Islamic faiths. So, I'm actually not Muslim. I don't identify as that. But, for those of you that know what I look like, you probably know that I give off that Middle Eastern vibe at times. So, essentially, I have a group of acquaintances, right? They're friends of friends that I see at social interactions, social engagements, pretty often, right? And I've known these guys for 5, 6 years now. Really nice guys, really fun to hang out with. But it's interesting how even amongst the Indian population, there is some ignorance, amongst religions and things like that. So, my friends, I guess, are predominantly of Catholic and Christian faiths. So, you know, Hindu, Islamic, Sikh, all those types of faiths are equally as foreign to them as maybe for a Caucasian person, right? So the humor in this is that so every year I'll meet up with these guys around. We hang out often, so even around this time. So what'll happen is we'll do our greetings. Hey, what's up, man? How's it going? How you doing? How's it been? Right? And they'll ask me, out of curiosity, out of the kindness of their heart, they'll go, "Hey, man, how's Ramadan going?" And I'll be like, I guess it's going well. It's yeah, it's good, and they move on, right? Every single year, even though I've explained, right, that I don't identify as that. They go ahead and ask me how it's going anyway, and I appreciate the concern, I appreciate the sentiment, and it's polite, right? So I say, thanks for asking, even though I don't celebrate. So a little bit of humor there. Um, so diverting, right? Let's go back into the book for today, right? So for those of you that weren't in tune for last week's podcast, we started a new book called Mindful Relationship Habits by S.J. Scott and Barrie Davenport. So we went through mindful relationship habits number 1 through 5 in the last podcast. So for part 2 today, we're going to go through podcast. We're going to go through habits 6 through 10. So in the last podcast, what we left off with was really talking about how love and relationships can be a really great journey to embark upon. They can really assist us in achieving our potential, right? So let's just go ahead and we'll dive straight into it. So mindful relationship habit number 6 is cherish your partner. So starting off with a quote, the author says, when you cherish your partner, you show a willingness to put your partner first. Now, we talked about in the last podcast how I believe, and the book states, that your significant or your intimate relationship should be your most valued relationship. So let's talk about how the book outlines to cherish your partner. So, at a high level, you should be willing to nurture and foster their growth and development. So, yes, your growth and development is important, but as is your intimate partners. So, you guys are a team, right? And with any team sport, we know that one person cannot do it all. It takes a group effort, it takes a team effort. So, coming back to my life, some examples. As we talk about, right, in the level set of every podcast, I read a lot of books, right? I'm constantly reading, and so does my fiance. And even though it might be much, I tend to share all my thoughts with my fiance. And some of the things she finds interesting, and some of the things she really doesn't. But at least we're exchanging knowledge. At least we have a platform to exchange knowledge together, right? And reading is fundamental to my growth, right? It opens up my mind, gets me thinking about different things, and it's a big part of my personal growth. But going forward, right? Um, we have to be aware of all types of communication, and the book outlines this as being aware of your body language, being aware of your verbal as well as your written language, right? Um, and there's nothing that can curb an interaction, right, or a genuine interaction with your significant other or in general, like a sarcastic remark or even an eye roll, right, or even some lackadaisical body language or overly aggressive body language. Um, so the book's outlines, right? If your significant other is telling you something important, or maybe not even important, right, in your eyes, try your best to give them your undivided attention and respond in all facets to their sharing, right? When um, try to avoid after a long dialogue of your significant others saying, "Oh, damn, babe, that's crazy," and just moving on, right? Because that is a response, but it's not a catered response. It doesn't show that you were engaged. And like I said, I'm no guru on these things, but there's a definite downwards, I guess, spiral when you get into that habit of just blowing it off, as opposed to the exact opposite when you are engaged in listening, right? When you're actively listening to your partner. And at baseline, there's really no downside to speaking to your partner with care and affection, right? What's the negative to it? It might take a little bit more effort on your part, but it can only bring about positivity in your relationship. Some things you can do that are minor, right? The book outlines. You can nod, right? You can nod in agreement, or you can just nod and let your partner know that you're listening. And we can genuinely respond to their statements, right? Go there. If they're expressing some emotions, try to go there. Try to feel that emotion with them. Let them know you're there. So, we can often also use soft words, right? The book outlines soft words. So when we have conflict, we can show that we are engaged and geared towards reaching a solution as opposed to staying down on that conflict. Um, and then, moving forward, right? Moving forward, in order to really cherish your partner, you have to be okay with them taking the spotlight at times, right? Showcasing them. There's really no downside to that either, right? And so the book outlines that, but a personal example is, I personally never feel uglier than when I go out in public with my fiance. People are always complimenting her, telling her how beautiful she is, how beautiful her hair is, and sometimes I'll ask, yo, what about my hair, dude? I got a fresh fade. But what I always do is say, that's my girl, right? She deserves all the praise, right? And cherish your relationships, and that really jives with me. And like I said, I'm no guru on these things, but just chiming in on some of the habits that I was reading about and kind of relating it to my life, my relationship. So that wraps up mindful relationship habit number 6. Cherish your partner. So we go into mindful relationship habit number 7, which is touch often. Now, there's definitely a little bit of stigma around this, especially in the South Asian community, but the book outlines a study that says partners in a relationship feel more satisfied when they're showing more physical affection towards one another, right? There's a lot of physical effects to start, right? Endorphins are released, can lead to lower blood pressure and lower heart rate. Um, and it doesn't always have to be anything sexual, right? Who here has had a stressful day and just came home and wanted to hug their significant other, right? Pretty much made it all better, no talking necessary, just a nice big hug, right? That can release a lot of stress, a lot of tension. But let's go a bit deeper into that. The book outlines that it's really good to talk about what types of affection you both desire. So, it can be easy just to find a form of intimacy that one of you is good with, right? But but to really nurture a close bond, you both should talk about what the ideal physical affection looks like for the both of you, and it can be different for each person, right? Like let's say for example, using an example, for one of the partners, it could mean sexual intercourse, right? For the other partner, it could mean cuddling, right? It could mean swooning on the couch while watching a movie, right? Those type of things. But it's good to talk about those things, and not just assume that you're good with just one mode or one medium, right? So leading into the next point, it's really worth putting yourself out there to have that conversation. Agree on a way that you both will show physical affection. And so coming back to my life, that's not something like I would normally do. But um, because I want to nurture that bond, I'll have that conversation, right? It shows selflessness. It shows that you're willing to think about your partner's needs, your partner's desires, as well as your own, right? And I touched on this in the beginning of this habit, but there is stigma in South Asian culture regarding physical connection or physical touch. So, I spent a lot of time personally growing up believing that, physical affection was inappropriate. And then when you get carried away, right, PDA and stuff like that, yeah, it's definitely inappropriate and can make people feel uncomfortable. But on the other side of that, touching your partner um, in public in an appropriate manner, you know, is totally okay in my opinion, right? It's almost endearing to see a couple, right, who truly love each other, right? And being physical is not the only sign of love, but truly, wanting your partner, truly being there for them physically and emotionally, is commendable, So, just some food for thought there, as we wrap up mindful relationship habits, number 7, which is touch often. So, coming into mindful relationship habit number 8, connect and engage daily. So what that leads back to is being fully present, right? So always touching on the themes of the other books we've read this year, The Power of Now, The Four Agreements, The Alchemist, Man's Search for Meaning. Being present in the moment is really going to take away some of that anxiety of living in the past or waiting for something to happen in the future, right? Be fully present in the moment and be engaged with your partner. So, um, discuss in depth your hopes, your dreams, your goals, and even how the day went, right? Um, it may take a minute for you to get used to that much sharing, right? But like with any habit, once you form it, you'll definitely want to know all about your partner's day down to the finite details, right? For example, some things like me and my fiance talk about are how did the workout go, right? How did your workout go today? And for those of you that do exercise frequently, you'll know that. So you could do a 5K, let's say on Tuesday, and do another one on Thursday, and maybe another one on Sunday, and they might all go differently. You might even get the same times on all of them, but one might feel harder than the other. One might feel easier, right? And it's worth a conversation, right? And once you know how that feels, you're gonna want to talk about it, right? I want to talk about it. Me and my fiance run. We don't run together, but we do run, and we talk about how our went. We talk about how we felt about the workout for the week. We go over did we meet our habits for the week? How did we feel about it? Things like that. It's good to have those conversations, and then we're proud of each other for hitting our goals. And if we don't hit our goals, we build each other up. So to the point where we do hit our goals, right? We help each other achieve what we want from life, or what we want in life. I even, ask how did that conversation with your friends go, right? If she's on the phone with some of her best friends, if she goes to a hangout with some of her friends, I'm gonna ask her, how did it go? And I want to know every detail, right? I want to know every little thing about how that interaction went because it's important to me. Brings us closer, right? I'm the one person that she can share everything with, and vice versa. Um, I like to know the latest gossip, right? It's almost like a TV show. I'm on it, right? I want to know, like, ooh, what that bitch do, right? Like, I want to be there with it. So, it's just important to me, right? And I think the more important you hold these types of little conversations, it opens you up for further conversation, for deeper conversation, as your significant other feels comfortable bringing anything to you. That's going to lead us into our next habits and stuff like that, but just touching on it early here. So we diverted just a little bit, but if we lose this connection, right? If we lose this connection of being close to our partner, being able to share, we might live more as roommates as opposed to like true partners, right? Because with your roommates, you're not necessarily having those deep conversations at a regular cadence. You're just kind of, you're co habitating with them, if you will, right? So, um, going back to the book outlines striving for emotional and mature communication as well as mature conflict resolution. So, I guess the best example to use is not fighting fire with fire, right? Once a conflict arises and you feel it in the air, as you nurture this connection, you realize that you can't fight abrasion with abrasion. and you start to develop conflict resolution habits, right? Let's sit down, let's take a minute away from each other, and then we'll come back and talk about what happened, right? And we'll both have in mind, or both keep in mind the initiative of reaching a resolution as opposed to continuing this argument. So, but what comes with that, and the book outlines it, is um, have a willingness to forgive and ask for forgiveness, right? And this is where a lot of pride issues come into play, right? And I think especially for me and some of my guy friends, or some of the guys in general, is that we're proud people, and it's often hard for us to admit fault or ask for forgiveness because it can look like we're wrong, or it can look like we've lost the interaction or something like that, right? But when you realize there's really nothing to win if you do it by yourself, um, then something clicks, right? And then you look for a dual, a joint resolution, right? So so an example is, right, if throughout the day, and especially if you live with your partner, you're gonna get irritated no matter what. Like something dumb will irritate you, right? You leave a light on somewhere, you forget to blow out a candle, something like that, right? Um, Things are going to come up, we're going to get irritated, and sometimes that little irritation can be the straw that breaks the camel's back and lead to like an eruption. But if you did something wrong, right, or if not, right, if you have frustrated your partner, take the time, ask for forgiveness without shame, and if you're on the other side of that, forgive quickly, because at the end of the day, if you do love each other, it's part of the deal, but at the same time, you're not going to want to you're not going to want to have this argument. You're not going to want to feel this abrasion. You're going to want to get over it quickly, right? Because you want to go back to that euphoria of being best friends, right? And get off this temporary speed bump that you guys are on. So, little food for thought there. But what's interesting about this book is in a few of the chapters, there's these questionnaires that the reader can fill out that really help you reflect on your relationship and even some of your habits. Um, and it can give you a gauge on perhaps how disconnected or connected you have become. So a couple of the questions that they'll ask is, my partner and I don't feel close anymore. We don't know how to reconnect. And it'll be like, you know, agree, disagree, strongly disagree, right? It'll have those options where you can check them, and then you're supposed to go over it with your significant other. So another question is, one of us feels bored in our relationship. Talking with each other about problems feels useless because it doesn't seem to help. And then the book says, if it helps, you should schedule a planned conversation at a regular cadence to go over these things. And like I always say, it feels weird as with any new habit forming. But once you form it, it's going to become natural and it's going to feel less forced, less rigid. So we spend a little bit more time on this habit, but it's just a great way to nurture a strong bond. So that was mindful relationship habits number 8: connect and engage daily. So moving on to mindful relationship habit number 9, which is create shared rituals. So let's start with a definition of ritual. So any practice or pattern of behavior that is regularly performed in a set manner. So it could be anything, right? And we'll get into it. So the medium that you choose here is, and the book says this, is going to be the message, right? So you're going to begin to communicate around this activity or this ritual, and that is what is going to bring you together. So the more rituals you share, the closer your bond is going to become. So an exercise is to take an inventory of all the rituals or habits that you currently do and see what you can share with your partner. And if you don't have any, it might be worth creating some, right? So let's talk about my habits. So my habits are working out, reading, podcasting, photography, traveling, and I don't know if you want to throw smoking weed in there. I don't know if it's a habit of mine, but I guess I do it often. Um, so So those are my habits, right? Amongst many other things, where I do a lot more, but just a few here. So let's talk about the first one, right? I said working out. Okay, so she definitely shares this one with me. We had done Orange Theory Fitness together. We run together, and we generally work out. Um, sometimes together. We work out pretty much every single day, but not together always. I do hit classes with her online right now because of all this COVID madness. We go for long walks together, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 miles sometimes. When we run. We always run separate, or we often run separate, but we always go over our times together, and we always go over how the run felt together, like I was talking about earlier. So working out is interesting. So um, it's not always about the workout itself, right? A lot of it is those little moments, right? So when we go for a walk together for 4 or 5 miles, it can take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, right? And we're walking together. We don't have our headphones in, and we're talking. And the types of conversations that we get into are very deep at times, and sometimes they're not. But all in all, it brings us closer together, right? We start talking about things that we don't normally talk about. We spend like so much time together and get down rabbit holes. So I find out things that I've never known, right, to this day. Um, but so that that's working out right there, right? But we can talk about traveling, right? Traveling. So, in terms of traveling, let's talk about getting Ubers to the airport together, going on road trips together, um, being at the airport together, getting through the lines. One of our rituals are we get a bagel every time we go to the airport, right? We don't eat bagels ever, so we get a bagel with some cream cheese when we go and some coffee and sit at the gate. Um, and then we also stay together in new places, right? We stay together. We went to Iceland, New Orleans, Atlanta, San Diego, right? We're going to all these places, and we're exploring new cities together. We're exploring new foods together. We're doing all these things, and we're planning together, things like that. And even though um, we're not we might do things separately, we come together on the itineraries, we come together on the travel plans and things like that, and it really brings us closer, right? It showcases both of our talents, but also our willingness to explore new things. um, but we talk about podcasting, right? She doesn't necessarily do this, but she always listens to me and how I felt after I've recorded one. They all are different. Some of them go better, some of them go worse, right? But I go over it with her, go over the facts, go over how I can course correct and improve the following podcast, right? And she engages me fully in that conversation. Um, we talk about photography, right? She's really good with photography. She doesn't necessarily do it as a hobby, but I run all of my pics by her for her thoughts, and she engages me in that, right? If a picture I take isn't popping, she's gonna tell me, or if she doesn't drive with it, she's gonna tell me, and that doesn't mean I take her opinion, but at least I am open to it, right? That at least I'm asking for it. I'm asking to engage, things like that. Um, so it's interesting. It's just interesting that rituals are really things that can bring you together. They provide more talking points, right? When you reflect on them, when you look back on them, we talk about all of our trips. We talk about all about the 5Ks, the 10Ks, the half marathons that we run together. We talked about all the books we read. I'm into philosophy and like upliftment and history right now. She's into reading fiction, but we talk about both the books we're reading currently. So it's interesting, and as we talk about these things, let's say a year goes by, we have so many memories to talk about, right? So many memories to talk about in terms of reading, working out, traveling, things like that. So it just gives us a broader foundation, or a stronger foundation to build off of. So really long-winded there. But that was mindful relationship habit number 9. Create shared rituals. So let's move on to relationship habit number 10. And relationship habit number 10 is practice vulnerability. So the first question the book poses is do you feel free and comfortable being fully present with your partner? Being fully yourself with your partner. So let me rephrase. Let me start over. Do you feel free and comfortable being fully yourself with your partner? Can you share your deepest secrets, your most embarrassing moments, and your most painful secrets? Have any of you ever shit your pants and been able to share that with your fiance? I mean, I hope it wasn't recent in your adult life, but I think we've all done it when we were kids. And I definitely have shared those stories, or yeah, those stories with my fiance. Um, so you know what I mean? It's just those embarrassing moments. I think when you open yourself up to being vulnerable, you gain confidence from it, right? So that's any embarrassing story I really have is more funny in nature and things like that, and I have no reason to be ashamed of it because I wasn't doing anything intentional to do that, right? They were all accidents. They were all uh, not by choice, I guess, right? So, you should have a platform to be vulnerable, ultimately, right? That's the message here. So, I think personally, and in general, the book calls us out, is that we have a habit of really not being vulnerable or showing weakness related to our fears. So, and the book outlines is because being vulnerable is often taken as negative and weak, but in reality, in my opinion, it takes a strong person to be vulnerable and not really care about the fact that they're being vulnerable, right? Um, and the book states, right, if we can't practice vulnerability, then our intimacy will die. And like a flower, right? Vulnerability needs nurture in order for it to grow. So, for, like one example, coming back to my relationship, right? So we always ask each other random questions. So some are really silly, right? It's like, would you rather be a panda or a hippo? Okay, so that's a really lighthearted question. I personally would like to be a panda because they're cute as hell, right? They're super cute. They're fat. They're chubby. They're just eating all day. They're eating bamboo and just like munching all crazy. They're super cute, right? They're like so. That's what I would want to be. Um, but some questions we ask are more serious in nature, like, what do you think your greatest strength is? What do you think your biggest weakness is? So all these questions, even the lighthearted ones, they really force us to be vulnerable, right? They force us to share things that we're not normally talking about on a day-to-day basis, and share our deeper thoughts ultimately. So vulnerability really completes you as a person, and it allows for healing. And this is a little bit more deeper that the book goes into. Um, so when you're completely known by someone else, it really assists in removing past trauma or insecurities through knowing someone loves you fully despite your insecurities, right? So we've all gone through some type of trauma in our life, right? Whatever frequency it's at, whatever magnitude it's at, we've all gone through some type of trauma, and no trauma is more important, has more weight. Your experience is your experience, and since you have nothing other to compare it to, else to compare it to, it's hard to rank it in comparison with someone else's, right? But coming back to the point here is when you share your vulnerabilities, your past experiences, it gives that other person the confidence to share as well. And you begin to say, oh, it isn't all daisy and roses with this person or in their past like I thought it was. And I feel better now about sharing my weird past a little bit, right? I thought I was a weirdo, but like, oh, she's a weirdo too, kind of, right? Um, and then, as you speak about yourself, as you speak about your past, and that's essentially what I'm trying to do with this podcast, um, you can assess the person you are, right? And the changes you might need to make to become the best version of yourself. You can assess the negative traits, the positive traits, when you can speak vulnerably about yourself. You really open yourself up to change. And one thing to note is I've mentioned this in my earlier podcast is when I was younger, I used to be a big liar. I used to lie about everything, white lies, but even bigger lies, right? And I'm able to say that now, right? That I was a big time liar, and now I don't. Now honesty is one of my foundational principles, but I was only able to do that by admitting to my fiance that I had that tendency many years ago, instead of just covering it up, right? And then I was able to course correct, right? I was able to be myself and just course correct and be my best version of myself, and hopefully continue to improve. But like I said, practicing vulnerability is going to help you be more confident. You're going to accept who you are and who you're not, right? Um, there's certain people that they're anxiety prone because they're trying to be everyone. They're trying to be the person that is appeasing, maybe parents, appeasing the religious community, but then also, going out and having fun with their friends, right? You don't want to live your life at polar opposites. It poses a lot of challenges for you, right? And it doesn't set you up for success in life. And I don't want to get on my soapbox here, so I'm gonna hop off of it real quickly. Um, so the book outlines you can have some more peace in life by not needing someone to be someone else all the time. Okay, so I talk about when I first meet a person and I don't want to show my crazy side, right? Or when I first met my fiance, don't want to show my crazy side just yet, right? Or so what I call my crazy side. But when you let it out in a respectful and channeled manner, right, it brings peace to your mind, and you can be truly who you are, and you don't have to mask your quote unquote inefficiencies. So you can also, and that leads us into handling uncertainty better, right? So when you're able to speak of your vulnerabilities, they can correlate to uncertainties in life, right? So you can also handle your uncertainty in life better by being vulnerable with your partner. You're able to share things you've been uncomfortable about, and then once you get over that hurdle, you can potentially handle uncertainty that life brings with a better outlook, with a more positive outlook, right? Remove some of that cynical mindset that you might have, right? Not saying everyone has a cynical mindset, but I personally did. I had a negative fog when I looked forward in my life, and I think it was because I wasn't able to reflect, wasn't able to be vulnerable with anyone, and as soon as I was able to get that vulnerability with my fiance, the fog cleared up, right? I took off those dark sunglasses and I got color to life. But anyway, I'll say this. In previous relationships, I often lived a double life, right? I was really proper, and I was religious in front of my family and my potential, future in-laws, and then I would go out with my friends and be someone else, and not to say I was being worse or anything. I was just someone else, right? And that led to anxiety for me because I was living a double life, what I thought. But what I said was, in my future relationships, I'm just going to be who I am because in my heart, I know there's no malice or malintent behind what I'm doing. I'm just like my own individual, right? I'm just trying to carve out my own path. And that's what being vulnerable really shows you, right? Everyone has their own path. Everyone's unique. Everyone's trying to figure out what life's all about. No one has the answers, right? We're all just trying to move in a positive direction, hopefully. But what I'm going to leave you with is some of the best practices here are to really listen openly uh, without judgment and reaction. Okay, so you should always thank your partner for sharing with you because it's something that very few people know about them, and they've chosen you to share that with. Okay, so they wouldn't be sharing that with someone else, right? It's a gift. Deeper sharing is a true gift because not everyone gets that version of this person. So one question I want to pose to the group here is, how many people have had their parent or like a significant other have like an initial bad reaction to something or like an idea that you post and they say, "Oh, pff, that's stupid," or they get angry, right? So, a personal conversation I've had with my father many, many years ago. So, like I said, my dad grew up in poverty, right? So he comes from that mindset. So, I had a conversation with him once, and I said, I don't know how we got onto the topic, but I was like, people who grew up in poverty really don't have the same, opportunities as someone who was born into an affluent environment, right? And that's pretty common sense, right? I was using examples of people I knew, right? Oh, this person was born rich, and look at how they panned out. And then look at this person who, really who we know didn't really start off well, and they kind of took a different route. No knock on character. It's just the way you pan out, right? Because of the financial resources, the access to things when you are affluent versus when you are in poverty. So when you're in survival mode, right, you're going to make different decisions as opposed to when your basic needs are met. So, like I said, my dad grew up in poverty, and his whole goal in life was to give us a better life, which he did. Okay. But what I think I hit a nerve during this conversation and he erupted on me. He started yelling and saying how, he's given me everything that he never had as a kid. And he just was lashing out, having this emotional reaction. And I think he took it personally, right? And all I was trying to do was have a conversation with him, right? It's like, yo, hard flex, man. Like, but anyway, um, I don't want to do that to my fiance in my current relationship because I know how it feels. And you know what? Her thoughts and ideas should be heard, right? She's not wrong for feeling something or shooting at the hip or thinking something, she should be able to run any idea that flutters across her mind by me, and I should be able to listen without judgment, without emotionally reacting to it, right? And that is a sign of emotional maturity and cherishing your partner, honestly. So, long-winded there again, right? But that was mindful relationship habit number 10, practice vulnerability. And that's the last habit we're going through for today. So I'm going to leave you with this statement, okay? Make sure your partner sees the true you as often as possible. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. Feel free to leave me any comments. And remember, only positivity. Thanks, guys.